I was 15 minutes into the biggest pitch of my career when Ryan Foster walked into that boardroom and destroyed my life in front of a room full of investors. They thought they were saving money by firing me. Instead, they just lost a $75 million deal and handed me the weapon to expose the biggest fraud in our company's history. My name is Mason Brooks. I'm 49 years old, and this is the story of how I went from victim to victor in less than 90 days. Look, that Tuesday morning started like any other day at Henderson Creative. I'd been with the company for 22 years, worked my way up from junior account exec to senior creative director. At 49, I thought I had job security. After all, I'd built half the client relationships that kept our doors open. The conference room reeked of strong coffee and tension. I stood at the head of that mahogany table wearing my navy suit, the expensive one my ex-wife Sarah picked out 3 years ago when we were still married and she still cared about my career. Across from me sat Oliver Kane, CEO of Kane Technologies, along with his team of investors and decision-makers. This wasn't just another client presentation. This was the Apex Digital Transformation Campaign, a $75 million contract spread over 5 years that would secure our agency's future. For 6 months, I'd lived and breathed this project, missed my son Joey's basketball games, skipped family dinners when my daughter Sophie came home from college. But here's the thing. At 49, with 2 kids heading to college and a mortgage that kept me awake at night, I couldn't afford to fail. "Gentlemen," I said, clicking the remote to display our opening slide, "what you're looking at isn't just a marketing campaign. It's a complete digital revolution for your customer base." Kane sat back in his chair, arms crossed. The guy was worth more than I'd see in 10 lifetimes, but he'd started Kane Technologies in his garage 15 years ago. Self-made. I respected that. More importantly, I understood guys like him. For the next 15 minutes, I was in my element. I'd been doing this for over 2 decades. And you develop instincts. I watched Kane's body language shift, his arms uncrossed. He leaned forward, started taking notes. Even his assistant put down her phone and paid attention. "We're not selling products here," I said, moving into our demographic analysis. "We're selling transformation, the promise that technology can make their lives easier, not more complicated." I could feel it happening. That moment when a client goes from skeptical to sold. Kane nodded, asked a smart question about our social media strategy, then another about budget allocation. We were closing this deal. That's when everything went to hell. The conference room doors didn't just open. They slammed against the wall. Ryan Foster stood there like he was delivering breaking news. Ryan was our new VP of People and Culture, hired 4 months ago by the board to streamline operations. Translation: fire expensive people and hire cheaper ones. Ryan was 36, wore suits that cost more than my car payment, and had an MBA from some school I'd never heard of. The type of guy who used words like synergy and optimization in every sentence. "Mr. Kane, gentlemen," Ryan announced, walking into the room like he owned it. "I apologize for the interruption, but we have an urgent matter of corporate security that cannot wait." My stomach dropped. Corporate security? In 22 years, I'd never stolen so much as a coffee mug. Nicholas Wells, our CEO, looked up from his notes. Nicholas was 58 and had been running Henderson Creative since before Ryan was out of college, but lately he looked like a man who'd lost control of his own company. "Ryan, we're in the middle of the Apex presentation. I'm afraid there won't be a continuation of this presentation," Ryan said, his eyes locked on me like I was public enemy number 1. He had a manila folder in his hand, holding it like evidence in a murder trial. "Excuse me?" I said, gripping the remote tighter. "I'm about to close the biggest deal this agency has seen in 5 years. "Not anymore," Ryan said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Mr. Kane, on behalf of Henderson Creative, I must inform you that the person leading this presentation has violated our standards of fiscal responsibility and corporate integrity." The room went dead silent. You know that feeling when your blood turns to ice water? That was me, standing there while my career imploded in real time. Kane cleared his throat. It sounded like gravel. "Is there a problem here?" Ryan opened his folder with the drama of a prosecutor presenting evidence. "Mason Brooks, effective immediately. Your employment is terminated for gross misconduct involving unauthorized expense account violations totaling nearly $4,000. I couldn't breathe. After 22 years of building this company, mentoring junior staff, winning industry awards, it was ending like this, in front of our biggest client, in front of investors who controlled more money than our entire annual revenue. "That's a complete lie," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Nicholas, tell him to stop. You approved every expense personally. But Nicholas just sat there looking terrified. I realized Ryan had already gotten to the board, filled their heads with liability concerns and cost-saving measures. The documentation clearly shows unauthorized expenditures, Ryan continued, pulling papers from his folder like a magician performing tricks. Unapproved client dinners, travel upgrades, entertainment expenses. Mr. Kane, we discovered these irregularities during our quarterly audit and felt it was our responsibility to inform you before finalizing any agreements. Those were business expenses, I said, louder now. Every receipt was approved. The London conference, the client dinners, they were essential for building the relationships that brought us to this room today. Ryan shook his head with fake sympathy. The paperwork wasn't filed according to current protocols. In today's regulatory environment, we can't afford even the appearance of impropriety. Kane stood up slowly, buttoning his suit jacket. The movement was deliberate, calculated. You're telling me you halted a $75 million negotiation over travel receipts? It's about integrity, Mr. Kane, Ryan insisted. If someone cuts corners with company funds, what does that say about how they'll handle your budget? Kane looked at Ryan, then at Nicholas, then at me. His expression was unreadable, but I'd been reading clients for 22 years. This wasn't going well for anyone. Mason, Kane said finally, wait for me in the lobby. I walked out of that conference room feeling like my legs were made of concrete. 22 years of client relationships, industry knowledge, creative campaigns that won awards and generated millions in revenue, all destroyed in 10 minutes by a guy with an expensive suit and a folder full of lies. The elevator ride down felt like falling through space. When the doors opened on the lobby level, I stumbled to the reception desk and collapsed into a guest chair. Amanda Clark, our receptionist who'd smiled at me every morning for 7 years, looked at me with wide, worried eyes. Mason, what happened? I saw Ryan storm past here with that folder like the building was on fire. I'm fired, Amanda, I said. The words tasted like poison. He fired me in front of Kane and his entire team. Before she could respond, the elevator dinged. Kane walked out, followed by his advisors. He didn't look angry. He looked disgusted. Nicholas came running after them, practically begging. Mr. Kane, please, we can discuss contract terms, adjust the pricing, bring in additional oversight. Kane stopped in the middle of the lobby. Every employee on the ground floor had found a reason to be visible, watching our corporate drama unfold in real time. Discuss what exactly? Kane's voice carried across the entire space. You invited me here to build a partnership. Instead, you've shown me a management culture that's unprofessional and short-sighted. Ryan appeared, jogging to catch up, his face red with exertion and panic. This is a minor personnel issue, Mr. Kane. We can proceed with the presentation using our backup team. Kane turned to face Ryan directly. The look he gave him could have frozen water. Unprofessional doesn't begin to cover it. If you treat your top performers like this over expense reports, I can only imagine how you'll treat my company's interests. We have a preliminary agreement, Ryan said desperately. The terms were already discussed. Read the fine print, Kane said coldly. The agreement was contingent on the final presentation, a presentation you just sabotaged. Kane started walking toward the exit, then stopped and looked back at me. He gave me the slightest nod, barely perceptible, but clear enough, a signal. Then he walked out into the afternoon heat, his team flowing around him like water. The silence that followed lasted exactly 3 heartbeats. Then Nicholas turned to Ryan, his face the color of old brick. You idiot, he whispered. But in the silence of that lobby, everyone heard it. You just cost us the Apex account. Ryan's face went from red to white in about 2 seconds. You could practically see the wheels turning in his head, trying to figure out how to spin this disaster. It's not over, he said, but his voice had lost that confident edge. This is exactly the kind of toxic behavior that validates our decision. He pointed at me with the shaking finger. Security! I want Mason Brooks escorted off the premises immediately. If he touches a computer, talks to anyone, or accesses any files, call the police. Nicholas looked like he wanted to crawl under a rock. Ryan, stop. Just stop. I'm not stopping anything, Ryan snapped. She sabotaged this presentation with her attitude, her unauthorized spending, her complete disregard for company policy. I'm not losing my position because this dinosaur couldn't follow simple procedures. Here's the thing about moments like this. Time slows down, but your brain speeds up. Standing there in that lobby, watching Ryan lose his mind, something clicked. The guy was panicking, not just embarrassed or angry, full-blown panic. Nobody gets that worked up over expense reports, no matter how much they hate you. 2 security guards approached my area. Patrick Stone, who'd been saying good morning to me for 7 years, looked like he'd rather be anywhere else on Earth. The other guard, someone I didn't recognize, kept his hand near his radio like I was a flight risk. "Sorry, Mason," Patrick mumbled, staring at the floor. "Orders." "I know, Patrick. You're just doing your job." Ryan followed us as we walked toward the elevator, pacing behind the guards like some kind of corporate warden. 5 minutes to clear your desk. Personal items only. No files, no hard drives, and check his pockets before he leaves. "You don't need to check my pockets, Ryan," I said, turning to look at him. "I've got nothing to steal. You've already taken everything worth having." The ride up to the 40th floor was the longest elevator trip of my life. When we got to my corner office, the one with the skyline view I'd earned through 2 decades of 60-hour weeks, I grabbed a cardboard box from the supply closet. 22 years fit into one small box. Family photos, Sophie in her high school graduation cap, Joey at his first baseball game. My industry awards: Creative Director of the Year 2019, Best Integrated Campaign 2021, a coffee mug my kids gave me for Father's Day that said "World's Greatest Dad," a dried flower from the launch party of my first major campaign. My laptop sat there glowing on the desk. It contained my portfolio, my contact list, every relationship I'd built in this industry. Ryan walked over and yanked the power cord out of the wall like he was unplugging life support. "Company property," he said, tucking the laptop under his arm. "Everything on there belongs to Henderson Creative." I looked around the office one more time. The awards on the wall, the client thank you letters, photos from campaign launches where I'd worked 20-hour days to make impossible deadlines. All of it would be gone by tomorrow, probably boxed up and forgotten in some storage room. "Time's up," Ryan announced. "Escort him out." The walk through the bullpen was designed for maximum humiliation. It's a corporate ritual older than PowerPoint, the terminated employee doing the perp walk while their former colleagues suddenly find their keyboards incredibly fascinating. Nobody made eye contact except Mark Patterson, a junior copywriter I'd hired straight out of college 2 years ago. He looked up from his screen and gave me a small, sad wave. I tried to smile back, but my face wasn't cooperating. Patrick held the lobby doors open. The afternoon heat hit me like a wall. "Take care, Mason," he whispered as I stepped onto the sidewalk. The doors closed behind me with a soft hiss, sealing me off from the only professional life I'd known since I was 27 years old. I stood on that busy corner, clutching my cardboard box while the city rushed past, completely indifferent to the fact that my world had just ended. My phone buzzed. For a second, I thought it might be Nicholas, calling to apologize and beg me to come back. Instead, it was a text from an unknown number. "Murphy's Tavern, 6 p.m. We need to talk. Kane." I spent the next 6 hours walking around downtown like a zombie. Couldn't go home. My apartment would just feel like a tomb. Couldn't call Sophie or Joey. How do you tell your kids their college fund just evaporated? Couldn't even call my ex-wife Sarah. She'd been warning me for years about putting all my eggs in one corporate basket. By 6 p.m., I was sitting in Murphy's Tavern, a dive bar that smelled of stale beer and broken dreams. The kind of place where nobody asks questions and the bartender doesn't judge you for drinking alone on a Tuesday. Kane walked in at exactly 6:05, still wearing that expensive suit but looking somehow less polished. He spotted me in my corner booth and walked over without stopping at the bar. "Mason," he said, sliding into the seat across from me, "you look like hell." "Feel worse," I admitted. "Mr. Kane, I'm sorry about today. Those expenses, I can explain every single receipt." "Stop," he said, holding up a hand. "Chico. I didn't ask you here to talk about expense reports. I've been in business for 15 years, Mason. I know a setup when I see one." He leaned forward, lowering his voice. "Ryan Foster didn't fire you because of travel receipts. He fired you because you were the only person in that room who knew what they were talking about. That presentation was brilliant, by the way. Best strategy I've heard in 5 years. Hope flickered in my chest like a candle in the wind. "Thank you. But here's the problem," Kane continued. "I can't do business with someone who's currently radioactive. Foster's going to come after you with everything he's got. Non-compete clauses, legal threats, whatever it takes to justify his decision to the board. He'll try to bury you so deep you'll never work in this industry again." "I don't have money for a legal war," I said quietly. Kane slid a business card across the table. Then you better find some leverage. When you're truly free of Henderson Creative, and I mean legally free, call me. Until then, you're on your own. I can't be seen conspiring with a terminated employee." He stood up, straightened his tie, and walked out without looking back. I stared at that business card until the letters blurred together. When you're truly free. How was I supposed to fight a company with unlimited legal resources when I couldn't even afford my mortgage payment next month? That's when my phone rang. Lucas Pierce, my old college roommate, now one of the city's best investigative journalists. I hadn't talked to him in 6 months, but somehow he always knew when I needed him. "Mason, I just heard what happened," Lucas said before I could even say hello. "Word travels fast in this town. Meet me at my place in an hour. And Mason, bring everything you've got on Ryan Foster." Everything. Lucas's apartment looked like a cross between a newsroom and a tech startup. Monitors lined one wall, displaying scrolling data feeds and news alerts. Stacks of investigative files covered every surface. This was where some of the city's biggest corruption scandals had been exposed. "Sit," Lucas said, pointing to a chair next to his main workstation. He looked the same as he had in college. Messy brown hair, thick-rimmed glasses, and the intensity of someone who lived on coffee and righteous anger. "Tell me everything. Start from the beginning and don't leave out any details." I poured it all out, the months of preparation for the Apex pitch, Ryan's dramatic entrance, the false accusations about expense reports, the public humiliation in front of Kane. Lucas listened without interrupting, occasionally typing notes on his keyboard. "Here's what I don't understand," I finished. "Why fire me during the pitch? If he wanted me gone, why not wait until after we closed the deal?" Lucas leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled, "Because he didn't want you to close the deal. At least not with you getting credit for it. That makes no sense. The commission alone would have been worth more than my annual salary." "Exactly," Lucas said with a grin that reminded me of our college days when he'd figured out something nobody else could see. "Mason, this isn't just corporate politics. This is a heist." He pulled up a new browser window. "I've been tracking a pattern for the past 6 months. Mid-sized agencies getting new VPs with consulting backgrounds, sudden staff cuts of senior employees, then mysterious consulting contracts with shell companies." "Shell companies? Think about it," Lucas said, turning to face me. "Ryan fires you in the middle of a pitch, costing the agency a $75 million contract. That should be career suicide for him. But what if losing that contract was never the real plan?" Lucas started typing rapidly. "What if the plan was to fire you, replace you with a cheaper consultant, then bill that consultant back to the agency at a markup? You said he mentioned having a replacement ready? Joshua Hunt, some kid fresh out of business school. Let's see what we can find on Mr. Hunt." Lucas's fingers flew across the keyboard. "Here's the thing about fraud. It always leaves digital fingerprints." After 10 minutes of searching corporate registrations and business filings, Lucas stopped typing. Bingo. Joshua Hunt doesn't work directly for Henderson Creative. He works for Pinnacle Consulting Solutions, an LLC registered 3 months ago. So look who the registered agent is for Pinnacle Consulting Solutions. Lucas turned his monitor toward me. There it was, in black and white. Ryan Foster, 1247 Park Avenue, New York. My blood went cold. He hired himself. "It gets better," Lucas said, pulling up another window. "Pinnacle Consulting is billing Henderson Creative $18,000 per month for strategic creative oversight. That's $216,000 per year, Mason. What was your salary? $180,000 base plus bonuses. So he fires you, saves the agency $180,000, then bills them $216,000 for your replacement. The agency thinks they're saving money, but they're actually paying more. And that extra $36,000 goes straight into Ryan's pocket." I stared at the screen, processing the magnitude of the scam. But the Apex deal. He cost the agency $75 million. "Did he?" Lucas asked. "Or did he just cost them the deal with you attached to it? What if plan B was to go back to Kane with a new creative team and a reduced price? Cut the fee structure to win the deal back, but route the consultant payments through his shell company?" Lucas pulled up a third window. "Check this out. Ryan's LinkedIn shows he worked for 3 other agencies in the past 5 years. Want to guess what happened to their senior creative staff?" I watched as Lucas scrolled through news articles and industry reports. Pattern after pattern of experienced employees being terminated for policy violations and replaced with young consultants from companies that traced back to Ryan Foster. This guy's been running the same scam across the industry, I said, and getting away with it because nobody connects the dots. The agencies think they're cutting costs, the clients get new creative teams at lower prices, and Ryan walks away with consultant fees that dwarf any salary. My phone buzzed, a text message from an unknown number. Emergency board meeting tomorrow 9 a.m. New Apex proposal being presented by Pinnacle Consulting. Hope you understand this is for the good of the company. Nicholas Lucas read the message over my shoulder. Well, that didn't take long. He's already going back to Kane with Plan B. We have to stop him, I said. We will, but first, we need more evidence. Having the corporate registration is good, but we need proof of the actual billing. We need to show the money trail. Lucas opened another application on his computer. Remember when your hard drive crashed 3 years ago and I set up that automatic cloud backup for your work files? Yeah, but Ryan confiscated my laptop. The laptop, yes. But cloud backups don't live on laptops, Mason. They live on servers. And unless Henderson Creative's IT department is a lot smarter than I think they are, they haven't revoked your personal cloud access yet. My heart started pounding. Lucas, if they catch us accessing company files, we're not accessing company files. We're accessing your personal backup, which happens to mirror your work files. Technically, it's your data. Lucas was already typing in credentials. What was your login again? This could be hacking, Lucas. This could be justice, he replied. Your choice. I thought about Kane's business card in my wallet, about Sophie's college tuition due next month, about Joey's dreams of playing college baseball, about 22 years of my life that Ryan Foster had destroyed with a manila folder full of lies. Do it. The progress bar crawled across Lucas's screen. Connecting to backup server, authenticating user, downloading file index. There, Lucas said as folders appeared on the screen. Files last synced at 9:15 a.m. yesterday, right before he pulled the plug on your laptop. What are we looking for? Invoices, purchase orders, anything that shows money changing hands. Lucas navigated through directories with the efficiency of someone who'd done this before. Here, accounts payable folder. He opened a series of PDFs. Invoice after invoice from various vendors, all properly documented and approved. Then he stopped. Mason, look at this. His voice had gone quiet. Invoice from Pinnacle Consulting Solutions dated last week. $18,000 for strategic creative consultation on Apex digital campaign. That's my campaign, I said. I spent 6 months developing that strategy, and here's the approval signature. Lucas pointed to the bottom of the invoice. Ryan Foster, VP People and Culture. He's billing the company for consulting on the project he fired you from. Lucas leaned back in his chair. We've got him, Mason. We've got everything we need to destroy him. What's our next move? Lucas was already reaching for his phone. We call Kane and tell him exactly what his new creative team is going to cost him. And then we watch Ryan Foster's world burn. But before he could dial, my phone rang. The caller ID showed a number I'd been dreading all day. Hi, Sophie, I answered, trying to keep my voice steady. Dad, I heard what happened at work. Are you okay? Do you need me to come home? I looked at Lucas, who was watching me with concern. How do you tell your 19-year-old daughter that her college fund just disappeared because of corporate fraud? I'm fine, sweetheart. Just a little workplace drama. Nothing I can't handle. Dad, don't lie to me. Mark Patterson's girlfriend works at your agency. She said they escorted you out with security. Lucas held up a note. Tell her the truth. She's an adult. I took a deep breath. Sophie, there's some stuff going on at work that I'm dealing with. But I promise you, everything's going to be okay. Is my tuition going to be okay? There it was. The question I'd been dreading. I looked at Lucas's screen, displaying the evidence of Ryan's fraud, the smoking gun that could change everything. Yes, I said finally. Your tuition is going to be fine. Dad's got a plan. The next morning, Lucas and I sat in Kane's black town car outside Henderson Creative at 8:45 a.m. I was wearing the same navy suit from yesterday. Seemed appropriate for my comeback. Lucas looked surprisingly professional in a blazer he'd dug out of his closet, clutching a leather portfolio full of evidence. You ready for this? Kane asked from across the leather interior. He'd called us at 6 a.m. after Lucas reached out to him the night before. Been ready for 22 years, I said, patting the portfolio. Let's go destroy this guy. We didn't walk into that building like defeated ex-employees. We walked in like a SWAT team. Kane led the formation with his 2 attorneys flanking us. Lucas and I followed right behind. We bypassed the sign-in desk, took the executive elevator straight to the 40th floor. Through the glass walls of the conference room, I could see Ryan presenting to Nicholas and the board. He had charts up on the screen, probably showing how much money they'd save with his new streamlined approach. They were all smiling, thinking they'd dodged a bullet. Kane didn't knock. He pushed both doors open and walked in like he owned the place. "Gentlemen," Kane announced, his voice filling the room, "I believe we have some things to discuss." Ryan nearly jumped out of his chair. "Mr. Kane, this is a private board meeting. Security, how did they get up here?" "They're with me," Kane said, walking to the head of the table. "And I think you'll find their presentation much more interesting than yours." "This is corporate trespassing," Ryan shouted, pointing at me. "Mason Brooks is a terminated employee with no right to be on these premises." Lucas stepped forward and dropped our evidence portfolio on the table with a satisfying thud. "Actually, he's a whistleblower." "What is this?" Nicholas asked, looking confused and terrified. "That," I said, opening the folder, "is proof that Ryan Foster has been defrauding Henderson Creative for the past 4 months. Ryan went pale. "I don't know what lies you've concocted, but—" "Sit down and shut up," Kane said coldly. "Nicholas, I suggest you look at these documents very carefully." I pulled out the first sheet. "Corporate registration for Pinnacle Consulting Solutions, filed 3 months ago. Registered agent, Ryan Foster." Nicholas stared at the paper like it was written in a foreign language. "Ryan, what is this?" "Ryan, what?" "It's a consulting company," Ryan stammered. "Standard industry practice for liability protection." "Really?" Lucas said, pulling out another document. "Then why is Pinnacle Consulting billing Henderson Creative $18,000 per month for creative services on the Apex campaign?" I put the invoice directly in front of Nicholas. "That's my campaign, Nicholas. The one I spent 6 months developing. The one Ryan fired me from yesterday." Nicholas read the invoice, his hands shaking. "Ryan, you own this company? It's perfectly legal," Ryan said desperately. "Outsourcing creative services to reduce overhead." "You were billing them for my work," I interrupted. "Work I did as a salaried employee, then you fired me and started charging them consultant fees for the same project." Kane pulled out a calculator. "Let's do some math, shall we? Mason's salary, $180,000 per year. Pinnacle consulting fees, $216,000 per year. You weren't saving money, you were stealing it." "And here's the beautiful part," Lucas added, spreading out more documents. "We found records of 3 other agencies where Ryan pulled the exact same scam. Always the same pattern. Fire senior employees for policy violations, replace them with consulting contracts from his shell companies." Nicholas looked like he was going to be sick. "How much?" "Total billing across 4 agencies over 2 years. Lucas checked his notes. "Just over $1.2 million in fraudulent consulting fees." Ryan was sweating now, his expensive suit looking cheap under the fluorescent lights. "You can't prove intent. And Kane, you still need a creative team for Apex. I can deliver the campaign at 40% below Mason's original quote." Kane laughed, a cold, harsh sound. "Deliver what? You don't have a creative bone in your body. You're a con artist in a consultant's clothing." Kane turned to Nicholas. "This is why I'm withdrawing all offers to Henderson Creative, effective immediately. My legal team is drafting letters to your other clients as we speak. I imagine once word gets out that you harbor embezzlers, your client list will shrink considerably." "Please," Nicholas begged, "we can fix this. I'll fire Ryan, bring Mason back, triple his salary." "I don't want to come back, Nicholas," I said. "I want to introduce you to my new business partner." Kane smiled for the first time that morning. "Gentlemen, meet the new owner of the Apex Digital Transformation Campaign. Brooks & Associates Creative officially launched an hour ago." Ryan's face went from pale to purple. "He can't do that. His non-compete clause, Section 8, Article 12 of your own corporate bylaws," Lucas said, reading from another document. "Any non-compete agreement is null and void if employment termination was conducted in bad faith for personal enrichment." "Which this clearly was," Kane added. My lawyers have already filed the paperwork with the State Labor Board. Mason is free and clear. Nicholas reached for the phone with trembling hands. Security, send the police to the boardroom immediately. We have embezzlement in progress. Ryan looked around the room like a trapped animal. This is a setup. You can't prove I intended to defraud anyone. Actually, Lucas said, pulling out his phone, we can. Turns out you sent some very incriminating emails to Joshua Hunt about maximizing billing opportunities and optimizing the transition strategy. Corporate email servers keep everything, Ryan. Kane stood up. Mason, the contracts are in the car. Your LLC was officially formed this morning, the advance payment is ready for deposit, and you have your first client. I looked at Ryan, slumped in his chair like a deflated balloon. You know what's funny? If you'd just left me alone, you could have kept running your little scam for years. But you got greedy. You wanted the glory of the big presentation and the money from the fraud. Nicholas, I continued, turning to my former boss, I suggest you audit every vendor contract Ryan approved. I have a feeling Pinnacle Consulting isn't his only shell company. The conference room doors opened and 2 police officers walked in. One of them looked at the assembled group. We got a call about financial crimes? Nicholas pointed at Ryan with a shaking finger. Ryan Foster. Embezzlement, fraud, whatever you call it when someone steals from their own company. As the officers handcuffed Ryan, he looked at me with pure hatred. This isn't over, Brooks. Yeah, it is, I said. But thanks for the motivation. 3 months later, I was sitting in my new office overlooking the harbor. The sign on my door read, Brooks and Associates Creative. Lucas had decided to come aboard as head of business development after his expose on corporate consulting fraud won him a journalism award. Morning numbers, Lucas said, walking in with coffee and a satisfied grin. The Apex campaign launched yesterday. Already trending #1 in tech sector advertising. Kane's ecstatic. And Henderson Creative? Officially filed Chapter 11 last week. Turns out Ryan was running shell companies through 5 different agencies. When the FBI finished their investigation, there wasn't much left. I walked to my window, looking out at the city where I'd spent my entire career. You know what I learned through all this? What's that? For 22 years, I thought job security meant keeping my head down and hoping the company would take care of me. I was wrong. Real security is knowing you can take care of yourself. Lucas sat down across from my desk. Speaking of taking care of yourself, we have 3 new client pitches this week. That pharmaceutical company I told you about, plus 2 tech startups with more money than sense. Schedule them, I said. But first, I need to call Sophie. Her semester grades came in yesterday. How'd she do? Dean's List. Again. I smiled, thinking about the college fund that was no longer in jeopardy. Turns out getting fired was the best thing that ever happened to me. My phone buzzed with a text message. Unknown number, but I recognized the tone. Heard about your success. Well deserved. If you ever want to grab coffee and discuss opportunities, you know where to find me. Kane. I showed Lucas the message. Think he's got another project for us? Probably. Word travels fast in this industry. You went from corporate victim to industry legend in 3 months. I looked around my office. Smaller than my old one, but mine. Photos of my kids, awards I'd actually earned, a future I'd built myself instead of hoping someone else would build it for me. You know what the best part is? I said to Lucas. What? Ryan Foster is going to prison for wire fraud, Nicholas lost his company, and I'm having the time of my life. Lucas raised his coffee mug. To the best revenge of all, success. To building something better, I corrected, clinking my mug against his. Look, if you're sitting in a job right now wondering if you're valued, if you're worried about corporate politics or younger people coming for your position, let me tell you something. Your skills belong to you, not to any company. Document everything, know your worth, and don't be afraid to bet on yourself. Sometimes the worst thing that can happen to you turns out to be exactly what you needed. At 49, I learned that getting fired isn't the end of your story. It's just the beginning of a better chapter. The best revenge isn't getting even. It's getting better. And at the end of the day, that's something nobody can ever take away from you. Because here's what they don't teach you in business school. Companies will break your heart, but they can never break your spirit. That belongs to you alone. The moment you stop asking for permission to be valuable and start proving it on your own terms, that's when you become truly unstoppable.